Sahanau bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So the mission and purpose of a human life is to find the self, the soul, to uncover your real nature, nothing else. That is the reason you are born as a human being. But what happens is, because of this ego, this individuality, and the egocentric desires arising out of it, you lose sight of your mission and become mentally agitated, intellectually confused, and physically incapacitated. And that is what is portrayed in the first chapter, which we did, of the Gita, the yoga of Arjuna's sorrow. So he knows what he ought to do, but he loses focus because he personalizes everything. My family, my kingdom. And that is the beginning of the fall. And then when you have fallen, the other problem is this ego doesn't let you understand that you have fallen. You believe what you're doing is correct. And everybody around you is doing the same thing, so you feel validated. This is the problem. Now, how can you be wrong? What you consider right, the whole world considers correct. So you believe, yes, this is how to live your life. And that's what is shown in the first chapter also. He gives his own arguments, which seem perfectly logical to him. So unless you come to a point where you understand that no, this is not it, there has to be a higher purpose, there has to be a greater purpose in life than just this selfish, mundane living. Nothing can help you. Nothing means nothing. It has to come from within. And that's what is shown now. This is where we are. The 7th verse we completed last time. He finally understands, I am your disciple. Instruct me. I don't know what to do. So it has to come to that. Only then Krishna will start talking. So it doesn't work trying to thrust knowledge on people, trying to expect them to behave in a particular way. It has to come from within. Whether it's spiritual or even material in your life. Why do you argue with your spouses, your friends, whatever you're doing? Because you expect them to behave in a particular way. They don't want to. So it doesn't work unless they ask you for advice. So that's what he says. Now he says in the 7th verse, tell me decisively what is good for me. And only then and then alone does Krishna start talking. So this is what we completed last time. So remember this, knowledge is never given. Knowledge can only be taken. You can take knowledge from a person who has to give it to you because you want it. But you cannot give knowledge to anybody. They have to take it. So people are going around with this knowledge. I have knowledge, please take, please take, please. You want to give. Nobody wants to take. It doesn't work that way. You just prepare yourself. If you have the knowledge, those who want it will come. Those who don't want it, leave them alone. As simple as that. So Krishna doesn't talk. As you all know, I've been repeatedly telling you. This shows total objectivity, total maturity. That you don't want to thrust your wisdom on anybody. Let them come and take it from you. Got it? So that was 7. So are there any clarifications before we move on?
I have 2 questions.
Hmm.
So when you were explaining verse 3 and 4, you said, what is wrong with me that I'm not able to handle the situation and getting affected? That should be the attitude if someone wants to grow spiritually. So even with that attitude, I feel like the growth is very meager, very scant.
No, you're saying the person has the desire to grow. What I meant is it has to come from within. You have to be aware that there is something wrong with you and you need to improve yourself. That's how anybody grows. In any field. You're a tennis player. If you believe you know how to play and there's nothing to improve in your game, why will you do it? Only when you understand, no, this forehand of mine is not as good as my backhand, I need to work on this. Only then you'll improve it, right? Believe, no, it's fine, how will you improve? So that's a common principle. Now, what you're talking about is having understood the person is still not improving. That is because they're not putting in the required effort, assuming they have the capacity to improve. So it's a question of putting in the effort consistently in the right direction. So yesterday we were discussing, right? As you think, so you become. What you must understand is you've been accumulating these past desires and attachments for lives, literally. That's the truth. So to now overturn the whole thing takes time and effort. It's like you've been totally eating the wrong food and never exercising for 60 years, and suddenly you want to change and have a healthy body. It will take time. It can be done. Got it? So that's what was meant. So don't worry. You've got to keep putting in the effort. Cause and effect will function. If you're putting in the cause, the effect will come. So you got to analyze where is it that you're lacking the effort and what more can you do to improve it. That's it. And as long as you feel you're on the right track, forget about it. Just keep doing what ought to be done. Got it?
So, and the second question is, when we're talking about verse 7, here, my nature is overpowered by the taint of pity. In the second line, with my mind confused, here, does he imply mind means intellect?
It doesn't matter. He doesn't know what he's talking. He's not talking technically. Does it matter? Is this a mind? He says, I'm confused. So obviously, mind is just feeling. Intellect is thinking and analysis. So when you say confusion, it refers to the intellect, not able to think. But it can also refer to the mind. It's talking very colloquially. You don't have to take the cheta. He's using the word cheta, which means thought. Could mean mind, intellect, combination. So that's not important. He's confused. That's all. Right? 8.
नहि प्रपश्यामि ममापनुद्यात् यच्छोकमुच्छोषणमिन्द्रियाणाम् अवाप्य भूमावसपत्नवृद्धम् राज्यं सुराणामपि चाधिपत्यम् न हि प्रपश्यामि ममापनुद्यात् यच्छोकमुच्छोषणमिन्द्रियाणाम् अवाप्य भूमावसपत्नवृद्धम् राज्यं सुराणामपि चाधिपत्यम्
I do not see that which can remove the grief which is drying up my senses, even on obtaining prosperous and unrivaled kingdom on earth and lordship over the gods. So, see, the problem with this mental agitation is that it clouds your thinking so much that you're not able to see a way out. This is the condition. So, why he's putting this after the 7th verse where he surrendered to Krishna is, even if you're aware, the grief is still there. That's what is happening now. And since you don't have the knowledge and understanding, you don't know a way out. So he says, I don't see that which can remove the grief. Even if I get everything, but this grief. So you take the extreme, this is the state of a suicidal person. See, the whole human life is based on the hope of finding happiness. The problem is you don't know where it is. It's in the self, which you have to be educated about. So if you come to a firm conclusion, there's no way out of your sorrow, that is literally a suicidal person. So now what you must appreciate is the knowledge is so powerful. As long as you have an intellect functioning, you're able to gain it. The whole thing can be turned. That's the last chapter. So you don't have to, he's giving an extreme, from one extreme to the other. I don't think any of you are in a condition what he's feeling, suicidal. Nor are you totally established in the knowledge. It's somewhere in the middle. So you must understand, you have to be patient and keep gaining this incredible wisdom. And slowly you turn the whole thing. And even if you believe you're okay now, I have a nice family, I have enough money, it is still a very, very limited state compared to what you can achieve as a human being. So in both cases, you need knowledge. So he says that I can't see that which can remove this grief, drying me up, even if I obtain the kingdom and lordship over the gods. He's full poetry. Even if I am in heaven, lordship over the gods. So he doesn't know what he's saying. He's just so overcome by grief. And in the 9th verse, Sanjaya says, he just collapses and says, I will not fight. So this is the 9th, and then 10th verse onwards, Krishna starts speaking.
Sanjaya uvacha eva muktva hrishikesham gudakesha parantapa nayotsya iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuvaha. Sanjaya uvacha eva muktva hrishikesham gudakesha parantapa nayotsya iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuvaha.
Sanjaya Uvacha said, Sanjaya is the charioteer of Dhritarashtra. Those of you who don't remember, he is narrating the Gita, narrating the whole battle, which includes the Gita, to the king Dhritarashtra, who's in Hastinapur. The battle is being fought in Kurukshetra. So he's saying, having spoken thus to Rishikesha, Rishikesha is a name for Krishna, the Lord of the senses. Gudakesha, name for Arjuna, means the conqueror of sleep. Conqueror of sleep doesn't mean sleeping all the time. It means you conquered lethargy. Very, very active, dynamic. The destroyer of foes. So even such a incredibly active, dynamic person becomes incapacitated with sorrow. It's so powerful. I will not fight, and became silent. So this is the life of an extroverted person. Extroverted in the sense, if your focus in life is on the world and no thought of your personal development, of spiritual growth, you will end up like this. You will end up mentally agitated. Your body will break down sooner or later. You can't fight, you can't act, you get depressed, and obviously you can't think clearly. That's what he's now concluding here in the 9th verse. This is what happens with the life of mindless acquisition and enjoyment of the world. You don't get anywhere. And the rest of the Gita now onwards starts talking about the ideal life, the life engaged in your own spiritual development, which does good to you and the world around you. So you must clearly understand this is the first part of the knowledge. It ends here. What happens when you are completely focused on the external world? The mind is deadly, friends. He'll talk about it in the next chapter also. I mean, throughout the text, he will talk about it. But it's deadly because no matter what you get, it craves for more. So you never feel satisfied until you can't handle that anymore. How long will you go on? That's why everybody is looking for retirement, weekends, vacations. They just want to run away to find some peace. This is not the way to live. You must find peace in action, not by running away from action. That's a real life. And to the extent you're agitated, you lose your inherent power. I told you, a surgeon has operated on thousands of patients. You put his wife on the table, he can't operate. So your inherent power goes because your mind is agitated. So here is a warrior who's conquered so many battles, but he can't fight. There are people attached to their children and they make total wrong decisions and destroy themselves and their children. It's like that because you've lost your power to think. Your mind is so agitated. So, in this disastrous situation, the next verse says Krishna comes smiling. And this is the. So, here they are showing the one part of it, and the next part is the contrast. That look, there's nothing to be disturbed about. Smiling as it were. Interesting. Why would he say that specifically? To show that. 10.
तमुवाच हृषीकेशः रहसन्निव भारत सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये विषेदन्तमिदं वचः तमुवाच हृषीकेशः रहसन्निव भारत सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये विषेदन्तमिदं वचः
To him who was despondent in the middle of the two armies, Rishikesha, smiling as it were, spoke these words, O Bharata. So again he repeats. So note it, when they repeat something, there has to be a significance. In the middle of the two armies. The third time he's repeated it since the beginning of the Gita. And I told you, what does it mean? The Pandava army represents the good in the world. Kaurava army, the bad, the selfish. Pandava army, the unselfish. Middle of the two armies is where the Gita was given out. So the knowledge, the real knowledge of the self is beyond the good and the bad. In other words, the self, the true goal of life is beyond the world. Anything in the world is an involvement. And smiling is not heartless as it seems. What does smiling represent? See, it's like a doctor who smiles when he sees a patient crying because he has the cure. Don't worry. He smiles. I know what is wrong with you. In that sense, he's smiling. And second is the disparity. Such a great warrior, literally crying like a baby. You feel it's like the disparity gives you humor. It's like suppose Federer is begging, can I please play in the club? Can I play in your club? Won't you laugh? Are you mad? You're the world's best player. Why are you begging to play in a small country club? So he doesn't know what he's worth. He's temporarily lost his power. That gives that disparity. So he says, don't worry. He knows the cure fully. And 11th verse, he starts.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Ashocyananvashocastvam Prajnavadamscha bhashase Gatasunagatasumscha Nanushocanti panditaha. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Ashocyananvashocastvam Prajnavadamscha bhashase Gatasunagatasumscha Nanushocanti panditaha.
The blessed Lord said, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, you have been grieving for those who should not be grieved for. And you speak words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. So, see, he starts the sermon of the Gita here with very high philosophy, striking truths of life. In fact, this is the second topic of this chapter, titled Indestructibility of the Embodied. So, I told you, this is not there in the original text. Swamiji has actually divided each chapter. Now, the second chapter, for example, is 72 verses. How do you know how verse 3 connects with verse 30? There has to be a flow of thought, right? We have that? See, I told you last week, this is what it is. So he gives Arjuna's condition, second topic, the indestructibility of everybody. The real self within is immortal. So what are you grieving about? He starts with the highest truth. So what should you do? You perform your duty. That is your role in this world. Not desire it in action. And then how should you perform it? Topic 5. Desireless actions lead to enlightenment. And what is enlightenment? 54 to 72. So in fact, some of you who keep joining the class, keep asking, well, what is the book to read, So here it is. I had said it in the first class, which was a while ago. So this is the Bhagavad Gita, and the author's name is A. Parthasarthi. This is my guru who's taught me all this knowledge. So you should get the book. Those of you who don't have it already can get it on Amazon or even the Kindle or whatever you use, electronic. Very helpful to follow the thought flow. So coming back to the 11th verse. So he starts with the highest truth. And I think I mentioned this last time. You must understand the problem Krishna is going to have. The problem is, even though both of them are well into their middle age, by the time the Mahabharata war started, Arjuna still doesn't understand Krishna's greatness. Can you believe it? In fact, that is his greatness, that he never told anybody how great he is. No great person says, I'm great. That shows you you're nothing, right? So he treated them as they treated him. So they treated him as a confidant, a mentor, a cousin, a well-wisher throughout their life. So Krishna has to convince Arjuna that he is much more than that. He has the complete knowledge. He is an enlightened soul. Arjuna has no clue. Who's been so close to him? And the proof of that is in the 11th chapter, when he actually understands the greatness of Krishna, he says, please forgive me, because I may have insulted you not knowingly. I may have done things I should not have done, not knowing your greatness. In fact, he says that. So forgive me for all the things I've done in the past. That's the proof. Because you'll say, how do you know? It's actually there in the Gita. So he has to convince him, number one. Number two, Arjuna is highly emotional. He's not ready to understand knowledge. So he's giving him some time to recover by just dazzling him. And he recovers completely only in the 3rd chapter. He says, because then he asks him, what do you want me to do? Should I gain this knowledge which you've been talking about? Should I act? Krishna says, neither. Act based on the knowledge I'm giving you. What is this either or? So, actual practical wisdom of Gita starts in chapter 3. So, chapter 2, we have to understand, is not relevant to Arjuna, but for us, it's the highest. We have a chance to get a taste literally of what the Upanishads are. The highest philosophy is taught there. This is like that. This particular section, 11 to 30. So he starts with a striking truth. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. And what does he call the dead? Gata soon means whose breath has gone. Gata soon is translated as living, but what is the actual translation? Whose breath has not yet gone. So who are you and me? We are beings whose breath has not yet gone. Don't say I'm living. Say I'm not yet dead. In other words, now don't get so pessimistic. I came to the class for learning optimism, and it's not that, but you must understand. The truth is, it's so fragile. You're caught up in the non-essentials. This fragile existence, temporary existence, is meant to take you to the eternal. That's how you're supposed to use it. Instead, you're accumulating things which just pass, and then you cry and weep. How stupid is that? everything is taken away. Not yet gone. The Bhaji Govindam, he says that Ma Kuru Dhana Jana Yauvana Garvam Harati Nimeshat Kala Sarvam. Do not be proud. Dhana, wealth. Jana, following. Reputation. Yauvana, youth. Time loots these in a second. Just don't believe me, after class, go and look at yourself in a picture of yourself 25 years ago. It's unbelievable how fast it's gone. Just look at it. Then you'll become philosophical. 25 years ago, would you believe that you'll be here, this old? That time it says, well, 25 years. Before you know it, you're there. So it's just, you're in a phase which is not yet gone. Like Matthew Arnold says, life is an arrow shot from the darkness, flutters in the light for a while, vanishes back to darkness. Just fluttering for a while. So the wise don't grieve either for the dead or for the living, because they know both are inevitable aspects of life. They focus on what ought to be done in the present. That's the thing in your control. So a wise person is one who fixes their attention on the permanent and just watches the impermanent go by. Just let it pass. My goal is to get to permanence, that state of enlightenment. That's a wise person. So they use this temporary existence for what is supposed to be used. It's amazing. When I hear people sometimes talk, that it's so sad. I heard my friend was diagnosed with a terminal disease. It's very unfortunate. Very. See, it doesn't strike you. Next thing could be they're all talking about you. I think Will Durant said that. When you visit a patient in the hospital, congratulate yourself. You're not one. It's not indifference. Oh, you are in the hospital. It's not that. It could be you, but you don't understand that. Did that fellow understand who's in the hospital? So, and secondly, he says, you are grieving also for the wrong reason. You are grieving for people who don't deserve your sympathy, the Kaurava side. And yet you speak words of wisdom. He didn't speak any wisdom. But Krishna had to tell him, so he can't say right off the bat. This is again psychology. No doubt you're talking sense, Arjuna. But you don't know what you're saying. It's literally like that. Total psychology. Even if a person you think is talking nonsense, agree with them. This is very, very practical in the house situations. Because you will never say your husband is talking sense. It's always nonsense. And the same thing husband will say. She never talk. So at least agree with them. I have never met such a brilliant person like you. At least you'll get their attention. Really? You think so? Oh, impossible. So then he puts it in. The wise don't grieve. See, Arjuna has been grieving, right? So he's saying you speak words of wisdom, but wise don't grieve. Means you're nowhere close to wise. That Arjuna won't understand. Because he's happy that he's spoken wisdom. You get it? So a wise person is one who understands life as it is. Unwise person is one who understands life as he wants it to be. This is the difference. You want things to continue. This is not madness. This is the height of madness. It's like saying, why is the sun setting today? How mean, how unfair. I was having such a nice day. Don't see, it's like that. Will any wise person say, this is the time you get in the day? Now night will start. It's exactly like that. Anything you grieve for. My child didn't do well in school compared to other children. You're grieving. Why? Do you decide? Just because it's your child, it has to be number one. Everybody wants that. But your child's capacity could be 1, 10, 20, 80, 100 out of 100 people. You don't know where that child will fall. But no, it's my child. Therefore, it should be one. This is the height of madness. It is a child. I do my best, but where it falls on the scale, that's not my. It is not in your control. So if you have this clarity, friends, in life, every situation becomes literally a pleasure, an entertainment. If you don't have this, everything is a problem. Now you decide where you fall. You grieve for those who should not be grieved for. Point one itself is wrong. What are you grieving for? Who? And if you are a wise person, whether they are the greatest or the worst, they are living or dead, there is no necessity to grieve. So what should you do? That's the whole Gita. You understand what is your role and play it to the best of your capacity. That's the only thing you can do. He's not saying don't act. He's not saying be passive. This is how people misunderstand Vedanta. Let everybody be. Don't do anything. Renounce. No. The whole Gita is to do the best what you ought to do. Forget about it. It will pass. Yes.
Gautamji, let's say I have two questions actually, maybe just in one. So if we hear, let's say, news about someone's father passing, it's just news to you. But if I hear same news, my father passed away, then I grieve for it. So in that case, like it's the same event, a father has lost. But in my case, I grieve about it, whereas for others' case, well, I might feel a bit sad about it, but that's it.
Right.
And the second part of this question is again, while I was grieving, but over the time that grief goes up.
Right.
So does that mean like in the second space, how I become wise about it or just ignorant? What has happened?
No. Just because it goes away doesn't mean you become wise. Then you keep waiting for grief and going away, you will become enlightened sooner or later. Okay. So, see, everybody shortcut. Let the grief go, I'll become wise. What a conclusion you've drawn, Pandurang. Huh? Wait, I'm telling you, relax. So, number one, somebody else's father dies, there's no problem. My father dies, there's a problem, right? What is the difference? You are attached. So, when you are attached, what happens, why the grief comes is your supply from that object is gone. It's nothing to do with the object. This is called attachment. It's selfishness. What I was getting from that object could be physical, emotional, material, anything. That is gone. So if you have true love, you will feel that grief like you feel for your friend's father. But because there is no attachment, it won't affect you. You won't be disturbed. The feeling will be there. Number one. Number two, the grief goes not because the attachment has gone. The mind's got fixated on other things. right? So now that this supply is gone, you've shifted to other areas where you will continue getting supply. So over time this goes. And it's a gift of nature to help you forget. Because if you don't forget, you will never come out of anything. So with time, nature gives you, it's called in Sanskrit apohanam. Apohanam is the capacity to forget. You forget the vividity, intensity of any experience. Because if you can recapture how you felt that first day when you heard, all the experiences you've gone through in life will collapse. So this is, everything just dies away to help you survive. You understand? See, it's like how much do you think you remember of your life? All the see, you in 24 hours, how many experiences you've gone through? Every minute is an experience, right? Every second is an how much do you remember? 0.0000001% of all the experiences you remember. Do you remember what you ate last week on Monday morning? Do you remember what you wore Tuesday evening? Do you remember how many people you met on the subway on Wednesday? All the faces you saw, you remember? Nothing. So, because you can't, it will be overload. You won't be able to take it. So these are the reasons. You get it? But to work on the attachment, the only thing that overcomes attachment is knowledge. When you attach yourself to something higher, the lower attachment drops off. This is how you grow. There's no other way. Otherwise, like you said, you just move from one object to the other. From the father, it will move to the son. It just gets fixated on something else. And then this memory goes. That's all it is. You will never be able to recapture how you felt the day you heard the news and today. Let's say it was 5 years ago. Can you recapture it? That grief, you can't. It's not possible. Yes, Arun.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So, Gautamji, what you said, resonates with me. But when it comes to our children, when they do something that bad, or when they're failing, or when they're not doing well, it's so hard to sort of not to be emotional, or not to be affected. So yes, intellectually I understand it, but in practice, it's really difficult for me and for most human beings, because it's natural because of the attachment to your children.
Right.
So how do you sort of create that sort of dissociation, or how do you do that? How do you sort of get away from that grief?
See, like I just said, it is a function of developing your intellect, of growing into higher values. As you do that, the lower attachment goes down. It reduces. That's the only way to do it. So the attachment, first of all, you must understand, it is your selfishness. My child should do well. Doesn't matter other children don't do well. It is your own selfishness. It makes you happy. So when they don't do well, it makes you sad. It is all personalized. And like you said, it's natural. It's very unnatural to us who have gone through training. It's natural because you've not gone through training. So you're not wrong to say that. So you have to work. And when you work on it, you will not lose that love you have for the child. In fact, it will grow. But you will lose that attachment, that personalization. So you will focus on what is actually ought to be done for the child without bringing yourself in the picture. And you will make the right decisions as a parent. If you are attached, you will have a break in the relationship. Tell me which child wants to live with the parents. Tell me, show me one. I'm very happy I'd like to go to a college nearby and live with you, mom and dad. I will. It will be a miracle. There are very few people like that because they're detached. Whether you go or live, it doesn't matter. Whether you go or come, they have that relative. Otherwise, they're just 99% are waiting to leave. When will I go to college? I know children who told me, I'm choosing, we are here in New York, I'm choosing one San Diego, not even LA, was furthest flight, for maximum distance from the parents. So every break they won't come and see me because they're very stingy, they won't spend on the flights. So this is my way of. Because when I asked him, I said they'll take a flight and come. No, I know that. They're too stingy for that. They won't spend that much. And I won't go. They'll be happy because, so win-win, You understand? So it's a function of knowledge and maturity. And just by understanding means what? You understand you should do it. You understand you should not eat junk food. You don't eat? Is it? So understanding is a very surface piece of information. You have not grown with that to apply it in your life. That is what wisdom is. That's what we're talking about. So you may understand these, but to apply it is a different category, in different exercise. You have to strengthen your intellect. So with time, with effort, it will come. Not to worry. You're right. The parent-child attachment is obviously one of the deepest, if not the deepest, in most people. So they just can't see any way out of it. That grief overwhelms them in an instant. Vakramyate shanat, he says. In a second, you're overcome by your delusion. And you sit there. Clear? Somebody else had their hand. 12.
न त्वेवाहं जातु नासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम् न त्वेवाहं जातु नासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम्.
Never indeed was I not, nor you, nor these rulers of men. Also none of us will cease to be hereafter. Can you imagine in the middle of the battle? Arjuna has no clue. He's full of sorrow. And Krishna is saying this. This is the highest philosophy of life. So obviously, like I said, you all should understand the context. He's not trying to educate him here. He's trying to dazzle him. That look, I have the highest wisdom. To give him that confidence. Before he starts the actual practical lesson in chapter 3. But as far as we are all concerned, you must try and relate to this. So he says, never indeed was a time when I wasn't there, nor you, nor these rulers of men. None of us will cease to be hereafter. So he's not distinguishing between him or Arjuna or the worst or the best of people in that battlefield. Now this is what you must notice. Make a note of. So what is he talking about? It can't be the personality. It can't be the mind. It can't be the intellect. He's talking about the soul, the self, which he refers to as I. Now this is the fundamental truth of the Upanishads, of Vedanta. That I which you refer to, what you call I, is not what you think it is. This I is not your body, is not your mind, it's not your intellect. You're calling it that, but it's not. I is the pure consciousness, the spirit, the soul, which is eternal. The body, mind, intellect will come and go. That remains the same. So, there is the soul, which is the consciousness, which makes you conscious. And then there's a body, mind, intellect. So when the consciousness passes through the body, you're conscious of the world. Passes through the mind, you're conscious of emotions. Passes through the intellect, you're conscious of thoughts and ideas. This is you, the individual. Combination. But your real identity is the pure I. So the proof is, see, you analyze. When you were a child, what did you say? I am a child. Then you're a teenager. I am a teen. I am a young man. I am a middle-aged man. I am an old-aged man. Now follow carefully. The body of a child, is it the same body you have now at 50 years old, let's say? It's nothing same at all. Every cell has been replaced. So I cannot be the body. Then you say, okay, then it must be the mind. What were the emotions you had when you were a child? Your mother and father meant everything to you. What are the emotions today? They're a whole different set of people. It's left that. 20 years now, it may be totally different. It's not the mind. These are changing factors. It's not the intellect. The thinking you had as a child, as a young man, as a middle age is completely changed, thoughts and ideas. But what remains the same is I. I am the body, I am the mind, I am the intellect. You use the same I. And what is that I? The constant principle is the fact that you are conscious. The same consciousness of the waking, of the childhood, middle age, old age is the same. The fact that you're conscious. I know this is high, but this is the base. You must understand. Then if you're a little more philosophical, you'll say, then I am the waker. But in the dream, you said you were something totally different, somebody. Are you that waker or the dreamer? But you use the same I. Deep sleeper, you say, I am nothing. Same I. So friends, this I stands separate, stands the same, the supreme. Everything else changes. That's what the Upanishads declare. Tat Satya Sa Atma Tat Tvamasi. That is the truth. Because that remains. That is the Atman. That is your real self. That thou art. You are that. So Krishna is telling Arjuna a matter of fact, which is to him, that look, the real I within all these beings never dies. It's these bodies which will die. So what are you grieving about? Slowly trying to get him to the fact, you do your obligation. And then he talks about the process of incarnation, because the soul remains the same. So what is the whole process of life and death then? He touches upon that here in 13. Yes, Saurabh, you had a question?
Yes. So Gautam, you talked about passes through consciousness, passes through body, passes through mind, passes through intellect. Can you elaborate more on passes through?
Passes through means it's a borrowed term. The body by itself is inert, right? See, your physical body is made up of the same matter as this table here or this chair. Now, what is the difference? Matter-wise, they are the same, right? They're just protons, neutrons, electrons, whatever matter is made of. So what's the difference? You are conscious of this table. The table is not conscious of you. That consciousness is the enlivening principle. Similarly, emotions. How do you know you have an emotion of sorrow right now? You're conscious of it. So consciousness enlivens emotion. You're conscious of your thoughts and ideas. So if you go deeper, the essence, the reality, what remains with you all the time is the fact that you are conscious. That remains exactly the same. And that same consciousness all of us have. All of us are conscious in the same way. What we are conscious of is different. So it is the supreme, all-pervading reality, the pure consciousness. That is the soul. So it is called Brahman in Sanskrit. That's why the collective reality, the totality is called Brahman. And when that Brahman functions through you, that individual consciousness is called Atman. Those of you who don't know the technical terms. It's like saying the sun and individual rays of sunlight. So it's actually the same thing. Sun means sunlight emanating from it. So when you talk about all the rays of the sun, you say Brahman. When you say that ray passing through a mirror, which is you say Atman. So he says, what has happened? All one reality which never goes. So you focus on what you ought to do now. Yes, Dharmi, you have a question?
Yes. We say that soul changes the body, or when someone dies, this is something we hear all the time, that soul changes body like clothes. So what is it that incarnates?
That's what we're coming to in the 13th verse. So just hold off for one verse. I'll explain that. It is not what people believe. Like I just said, the soul is all pervading, so it doesn't move. How can something which is everywhere move? It's like sunlight. Sun is everywhere. So when the sun strikes a mirror, it is reflected. That is life. So the mirror is you. The mind intellect. The frame of the mirror is the physical body. When the sunlight strikes the mirror, there's a reflected sun. That is you, me. So what is death? The mirror falls down. The frame falls. So that same mirror now transfers to a new frame. Sun remains as it is. And there is another reflection. That is death and birth. So it's not that easy. I'm just giving you an overview since we're out of time. But next week I will explain it in detail. That's what he says here. So what are you grieving about? You make sure you do what you ought to do in life. So everything we complicate by focusing on the non-essentials that pass. A wise person focuses on the essence, that true permanent essence called the self, and functions in the world. Then there's no problem. So this seems difficult, but it's this way for the next few verses. Then he comes down to our level. So don't worry. The whole Gita is like this, already dazed. It's not. Right. We'll meet next week. Hari Om.